Hello everyone, Davey here, back again to review the final episode for Season 5 of The Walking Dead for this year. Of course, it is the mid-season finale entitled Coda. Yes, this episode is titled after a Led Zeppelin album, so tune in February for the mid-season premiere, Houses of the Holy. And holy shit, this was a pretty damn good episode. Now, there's so many other tiny little things to talk about, such as the opening and things that have to do with the characters, but let's just cut right to the chase, which is going to be the thing that everyone's going to be talking about with this episode. It's the thing that The Walking Dead was really known for back in the first couple of seasons, and the thing of why it made it so annoying to watch the show and have a social media account, because you just can't go on social media. And if you haven't seen the episode, you're practically screwed, because everybody's going to be talking about this particular event that happened in the episode. Oh my god. Such is the case with like Game of Thrones, or back when it was on Breaking Bad. You know, you feel bad for, you sympathize for your peers because they're watching this episode, but because of time differences, especially us here in the West Coast, all right, having to wait 3 hours because everybody in the East Coast already saw it, and they're going to be spoiling it for us, so that's not always fun. But let's go ahead and cut to the chase. Spoilers, I haven't said this in a while, but spoilers for this mid-season finale of The Walking Dead. We say goodbye to Beth. Beth dies in this episode in the climax of what is the showdown between Rick and Dawn's police army in the hospital, which really wasn't an army, it was a handful of cops. But further to the point, at the end, Dawn decides to screw up the entire deal. I mean, it was going just so well, and she just had to be a stubborn little bitch. But anyways, she decides to screw it all up by having Rick's group give up Noah to replace Beth, but that wasn't part of the deal. And of course, I saw that coming, because things were just going on so smoothly that there was no way that this was going to be a clean trade. So sure enough, Dawn, in a very smirky way, says, well, not really smirky, but in a very overly confident way, says, I want Noah, then we have no deal. And I guess we can go ahead and talk about Dawn here for a second, because this was actually somewhat of a significant episode for Dawn before she gets taken out at the end of this episode, because I found her switch in character in the last episode where she helped out Beth in that one scene to be a little against her character, but here they started to address my concerns, my complaints with that switch. And basically telling me, through the writing of the character, especially in that scene where she is having this bit of a standoff with that officer who listens in on Dawn and Beth's conversation about Beth being the one that took out that cop indirectly by having Dawn turn and eat him. And he listens to this, and of course, this is the type of thing that Dawn didn't want her officers to know about, which is why she looks the other way when they're doing things with these patients inside the hospital. So once that entire integrity has been breached, she is put in this difficult situation where she doesn't know what to do. Is she going to have to kill this guy, or is she hopefully going to be able to convince him to himself look the other way? And I found that scene to be rather intense, not only because the actress who played Dawn was doing actually a rather terrific job. That was some pretty good acting on her part, but also because it brought forward the shades of that character that I wasn't understanding before. I wasn't understanding that switch of her helping out Beth. Here, I was starting to see the struggle with the character of why she needed to be one person in front of the officers, but then another. But that other person that she wanted to be, that's not the person that she wants to be in front of her officers. She wants to be that person that was prior to this whole outbreak, is just deteriorating. And even she herself is seeing like, okay, it can't be this person anymore. And she kind of absorbs that. She completes her transformation, if you will, in that last scene where she decides to double cross Rick's group and ask for Noah instead at the end. And that, you know, to be honest, I think the whole thing could have gone on smoothly. Sure, Noah would be practically a slave at the hospital, but she just had to say that one thing that set Beth off and said, you know what? And that's why she said it. I get it now, and decides to stab Dawn. But Dawn, that hostile part of her brain, shoots her in the head and kills Beth. Thus, almost leading to what was going to be a shootout, but then the other girl's like, no, wait. It was just them. We don't have to do this. And fortunately, this gets to Rick's group and Rick himself, especially after what we see him do at the beginning of this episode, taking out Sitwell. I'm just going to call him Sitwell. Taking out Sitwell, and I don't know why, but I found that opening to be kind of comedic. Him getting hit by the car, and then his whole arc there, trying to escape, just gets cut off before he's able to do anything else. I don't know, there was just something darkly funny about that entire opening. But Beth dies in the aftermath, and this prompts Daryl to just take her out. And I'm glad that out of all the people that were there, it was Daryl to take out Dawn. I was like, yes. And at the end, Rick notices that, yeah, this was kind of a personal thing amongst the leader and even the officers, based on what the two officers that they held hostage earlier in the episode said, that, hey, this is about the leader. This isn't everybody. I mean, sure, we have some bad cops, but there are some good within our ranks, and we're one of the good guys, and it's because Dawn is becoming so unhinged that we have to do these kind of things. And Rick takes notice of this and says, we're not going to stay here, but if you're welcome to join us, follow us and step forward. At the end, we don't see anybody step forward. It kind of cuts in a very ambiguous manner, but maybe we're going to have some new characters in the remainder of the season when we return in February, and we know for a fact that Noah's probably going to become a regular, being that he made it out of this finale alive, and being that there's no Dawn to deal with, he can simply just join Rick's group if Atlanta doesn't suit him, because his objective was to get to Atlanta, to go home, and maybe there's going to be something that is simply just not going to pan out, and he's going to join Rick's group. I mean, I think he's been in the series long enough to become a regular, so who knows? We'll just have to wait and see. But at the end of the whole thing, Beth died, and you guys already know how I feel about Beth. So there's only a couple of things that shocked me about her death. One was technically how it went down. I didn't think it was going to happen at that instance. Her immediately stabbing, and then boom, immediately the back of her brain just goes like that. It caught me off guard. But still, the thing in the writing in the script that was Beth dies, no effect on me whatsoever. Because if you guys have been following my reviews, you'll know that I found Beth to be one of the most expendable characters on the show, and her dying has no effect on me. I'm not glad that she's dead, but I'm not saddened. I'm not like oh my god, Beth. What does sadden me are the people that were affected by Beth's death. Beth's death. Why should her name have to be Beth? And of course, those two people are one, Daryl, and it's a known fact. If Daryl cries, the whole world will cry with him. I was tearing up myself. But then there's also Maggie, who it hurt knowing that not only in this episode she finds out that Beth is alive, but when she gets there, she's already dead? I mean, man, that's just harsh, to be told that you're going to get something only to just yank it away when you get there. It's just the worst. However, I'll admit, as heartbreaking as it was to see Maggie collapse to the ground knowing that her little sister is now dead, it's a little strange to have her react that way after literally not mentioning Beth or at least the slightest, expressing some kind of concern about her, not only in the first half of the season, but even in the last half of the fourth season. I mean, maybe she mentioned her a couple of times, but besides that, she was just comfortable being in the arms of her Glenn. So as much as I want to say how big of an effect Beth had on this show and what her death means for the series, I really don't have one. I really don't, because I never really found anything appealing about her character. I just found her to be there. So I guess we can move on to other things that happened in this episode. Basically, as much as I'm trying to remember some of the things that happened between our characters in terms of depth and development, there's the one that I kind of already mentioned, the whole thing with Dawn, which, in terms of all of the characters, I found the development and the arc that was going on with Dawn, especially in that hallway scene between her and that other cop, and with Beth in the middle. I found that to be immensely interesting. At the end of it, I was like, yes, that was good. The other stuff I was okay with, like the stuff between Sasha and Tyrese saying, finally admitting that he let that guy live. Sasha looking at him like, okay, you were stupid, and I kind of did a stupid thing by following Sitwell to what he thought was his what she thought was his partner. I guess we're kind of even here, and you're still the same. That's a good thing, but I'm not the same, and I don't think I can be. I thought that was good stuff, but I didn't feel like that was the focus of this episode, so I'm like, okay, let's go ahead and wait to see how the rest of the series treats this particular thing. Now, the stuff at the church, however, is a different story. First of all, I like that. This is gonna sound kind of weird, but I really did not mind having the church be overrun because, hey, now our characters are maybe moving out of this woods area. Maybe we'll settle for Atlanta because now, not only we practically have the entire group together at the end of this episode, in dire circumstances considering they lost one of their own, but we finally got the group back together after what happened at the beginning of this episode. After what happened in the church, we split off again, and now we're back together again, and that's good. That's a good way to wrap up this first half of the season. And now maybe they'll find something to settle in within the city, so we can now get away from the woods. And having the church be overrun is the first example of this hopefully happening. The only issue I have with it is that it came at the hands of Father Gabriel, the freaking doofus. Because after this episode, sure, he might have some kind of dark past that I'm still welcome to exploring, but please don't have him do stupid shit like this, where he is legitimately on the verge of getting people killed. I mean, if it wasn't for this stuff in the hospital, I'm pretty sure he would have been responsible for the death of Beth. The death of Beth. So hopefully they do something with his character, because if they don't, I'm really hoping that he's not going to replace Beth's role in being the expendable one. He did say that he was done running away, and maybe this is a step in the right direction, but they better do something quick. And as convenient as I found it to be, I admit it was kind of cool to have Abraham, Glenn, and the rest of them come back right in the nick of time to rescue I'm blanking on their names now. Michonne, Carl, and Father Gabriel, along with baby Judith, and the two of them follow Michonne's instructions to head to Atlanta, because that's where presumably this whole thing with Beth is going down. So it was a good way to get the whole band back together. I just think it was a little convenient and a little bit too quick for Abraham and them to get to the church in that particular time. So as a standalone episode, I thought it was pretty solid. As a mid-season finale, I thought it was pleasantly satisfying. It delivered something that a mid-season finale should do, especially if your show's not going to be coming back for 2 months. You got to leave something for people to ponder and absorb, and I think that the death of a character is appropriate. I'm just in the minority who felt that, being that I didn't care about this character, that impact personally did not affect me. I'm seeing people all over the social networks, Twitter, Instagram, saying how much they can't stop crying, how devastated they are. Me personally, I found it to be effective, but indirectly, by me feeling more for the people that were affected by this death, rather than the death of that character herself. And that's more of a personal thing. It's there's no wrong or right. But that's just how I personally felt about this particular death. They just didn't strike the right note for me, because it wasn't the right character to kill off for me. But some other stuff was still rather intriguing. I really dug the whole thing with Dawn, and I thought it was a good choice to put that in the episode where she went out, because I felt like it was a proper lead up. I liked it that she didn't take off after this, because we saw that bad side of her consumer, but it was a nice way to wrap up her arc, and I found her to be one of the most fascinating characters of this first half of the season, even though I hated her. But I loved to hate her. I loved to analyze her and see how she thinks. As much as I'm against it, as much as I'm feeling hatred towards this woman, she still has layers to her that I can peel away and be like, okay, cool. So I found her to be one of the more memorable characters out of the first half of the season, even more so than the cannibals we started off with. And there was still some cool stuff between our characters, but let's hope that what we're set up with at the beginning of this episode, by having everybody literally come together and hopefully find a new destination to head towards to, because not everybody knows about Eugene. Michonne and Carl finally figure it out because of Glenn and Abraham's arrival, but oh man, when Rick finds out and Daryl, oh my gosh, I'm hoping that's one of the things that has me looking forward to the mid-season premiere in February most, and what is this going to mean for our characters, and what's going to be their brand new destination, and hopefully it's in a much more urban area rather than the woods. And before I wrap up, it's interesting that there is a particular frame that focuses on Father Gabriel leaning on a tree that has a symbol. Hopefully, the mid-season premiere will kick off with the return of Morgan. It's definitely something that the show could definitely use right now. So, once again, a solid episode and a fitting finale, but nothing that really blew me away, but because it was of personal taste. And that personal taste was not not having any kind of connection with the character whose death we see in this episode, which was Beth. So for that, I give Coda an 8 out of 10. It was still a good episode, but it just didn't do anything to shake me to the core like Walking Dead has done before. So thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you guys thought of the episode, and that is it. No more Walking Dead until February. So I'll see you guys then with the mid-season premiere. Take care.